My name is Aco Momčilović. I'm the head of AI Special Interest Group in IPMA. And today we will have interesting things and experiences and lectures to talk about and to hear. Our main speaker today is Lloyd Skinner, and he will give the main presentation. But I was very happy to be able to persuade Reinhard Wagner, one of the most prominent IPMA members, to give us the short opening and introductory speech to share with us the most relevant information and maybe some things about what is happening with the IPMA initiatives this year, and also maybe some predictions for the next year. At the end, after we will have Lloyd's presentation and Q&A, I will also just share a few short information about current projects and initiatives from the IPMA Special Interest Group of Artificial Intelligence. So, with that being said, Reinhard, please, the microphone is yours. We would all love to hear your introductory thoughts.
Thank you, Aco, and welcome everybody to this webinar. I'm very happy to have some opening words. And I will start with IPMA because IPMA turning into 60 years. And from the beginning on, project management was evolving very much. So in the beginning, IPMA was not called IPMA, it was called Internet. For those not knowing that, and it was an international network of specialists in network planning using computers already in the 60s. So it was a big thing. We were not yet talking much about AI. It started then in 67, but I think it's very interesting to see that project management already started in the very early years with the help of computers to solve problems and do that. And I'm very sure that it's needless now to emphasize the importance of AI nowadays for project management because it's overwhelming what we experience in our private lives, but also in our professional lives. I think here in the context of IPMA, it's very important to go beyond the hype, because we see a huge debate about how to use ChatGPT and many other things. So people start using it, but then after a while they get bored and stop using it. So and that's very dangerous in my view. So this is why we emphasize to go for real use cases. I'm a academic, and I see also working on use cases is the hard side, the most difficult side of using AI and applying it. I'm working with industry here in Germany on really applying it to risk management, for example, or in the planning or in the controlling, documentation, etc., etc. But also on the academic side, we are more focusing on use cases, how to make use of different technologies that are around. I'm very happy that my both sons are in that area of AI. So with them, we did a survey on what's going on, which technologies are being used, and we made that also public in the IPMA Research Conference last year. And it starts from AI agents, which are very popular at the moment. A lot of them are popping up. Then till smart contracts. My eldest is working on blockchains and cryptocurrencies and fueled by AI. So it's very important that we learn about that. So if I'm looking now into the future, the next 60 years, and I just wrote an article about it for the 60th anniversary book of IPMA, the question is what's left for us as project managers in this era of AI? And that's a very critical question because some surveys say, like Gartner, 80% of the task of a project manager will disappear. So some are really anxious whether they still have a job in the future. And the good news is, yes, there will always be a job for the project manager, but it will be a different job. And I think that's very important to recognize so that we are more turning towards the soft skills that we anyway in IPMA emphasize. It's especially that we see project as a collaboration where we integrate many people. It's also a very creative job, like Atso in his background and also in my background, created by this special interest group here. But it's also in the end an entrepreneurial job, so that the project manager is not so much focusing on methodologies, but more on the whole business case, on the strategy, on why do we do projects, or what for. And I think that's what we need to learn. Will robots or machines be the only ones in the sphere of projects? As I said, no. But I think we need to learn that there's an augmentation happening. So an augmentation of people working together with machines, with even robots, and we need to learn what our role in that game is. So in the end, I would always say we need to stay in control. So also, especially in projects, we need to stay in control and but we need to define that role. We need to have more clarity on that role. And I think that will be the task for us in the next years to define that our role in projects more thoroughly than in the last 60 years IPMA was developing that area. And I'm very sure that Lloyd and Atso will explain more what's to come. I'm looking forward to it and happy projects, as I used to say. Thank you. Back to Atso.
Thank you, Reinhard. It's always a pleasure to hear a few of your thoughts. I can only underline what you said. I think this is very important year for IPMA celebrating 60 years anniversary, right, in Berlin. I think it's also a critical time to discuss the future of project management connected with artificial intelligence. In my few of last slides, I will actually return to many things that you said. We are quite aligned, although we didn't we didn't do it on purpose. So I'm very glad that we have the same way of thinking. I'm hoping that the audience, will be able to post Q&A. I think that I was able to open it for everybody to post the questions there, and also to put some comments in the chat. I will see if this is working. Lloyd commented that he's not able to put some messages into the chat. I will see what's happening with that. But in the meantime, Lloyd, be free to share your presentation, and then and of course to start with it. And Reinhard, thank you one more time for your very nice introduction.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Thank you for introducing me as well. And lovely to hear your thoughts there, Reinhard. Really chimes with some of the stuff I'm going to talk about. I would encourage people to drop Q&As in them. I'm sure between these guys, they can pick them up, and maybe as we go, we can stop and see if there's anything worth adjusting as we go. For those that don't know me, I'm the CEO of Greyfly.ai. And we've actually been working in this space around AI and project management now for some 7 years, developing out a suite of products under the heading of intelligent project prediction, and I'll talk about that a little bit more, and the real case studies that were referred to. My background is that I did a degree in business studies and a master's in information systems, and some 7 years ago I went on the 25-year postmaster's anniversary and got chatting to somebody who became my business partner about the technologies that we'd been taught hadn't been applied to the world of project management. So obviously AI or big data, all of that sort of stuff. So that's how Greyfly was born. My career, I'd ended up working in particular at the BBC. I ran a couple of their big building programs. So I would have property, business change, PMO, business systems all reporting into me, as it were. these days, because I've been in this space for some time, I get to speak to lots of conferences like this, and get to go to various places around the world and speak to various organizations as well. Please do feel free to link in with me or follow greyfly.ai. Um, what is clear, even from the opening remarks, is now is the time to be considering what is the impact of AI in projects and AI on project management. You can't get away from the subject AI. It's in our everyday lives, it's in our children's lives. We're getting impacted all from all sides, as it were. However, one of the things I would say is that before we dive in and start talking about how we can leverage AI, I think there's a question there about, well, what problem are we trying to solve in the first place? And we've all heard about the messaging about, projects don't necessarily deliver to plan or to deliver to a budget. And in particular, when you compare that to the original plans, the original budget. So if AI could help to improve those success rates, wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? I think the other points there is to think about, well, how many times have we started a project without learning those lessons, or without, having an instantaneous risk log in front of us, which is pertinent to the particular type of projects that we're managing? Again, if AI can help with that, wouldn't that be a wonderful thing as well? I think the other point there is, the amount of data, the amount of documentation, the amount of noise that is created with projects. Sometimes it's very hard to see the wood from the trees. Sometimes some of those documents are contradictory and don't necessarily show the one version of the truth as well. So again, if AI can help us there, wouldn't that be a wonderful thing as well? The other thing that we've found actually is that even if you start taking an AI lens to your projects, it actually helps drive maturity as well. So it starts lending itself to improving data, improving project management maturity. And again, obviously that has a knock-on effect in terms of success as well. The other thing is, we're now in a world where technology, we heard the mention there from Reinhardt about AI agents and, the ability to stand up things a lot more rapidly as well. It means that we can get over some of the capability constraints as well. So if AI in any way or fashion can help us improve project success, then I think that's a good thing. Those that have heard me speak before know that for a very long time I've been talking about AI in terms of the application on the efficiency side of projects. So, very early entry points there are things like recording of meetings, creating minutes, creating actions that came out of those meetings, lots and lots of tools in that space. But even now, we can go one step further with document creation, first pass project charters, first pass risk logs. So there's one lens here, which is all about the efficiency side. So doing things right, and possibly using the same amount of people, resource to do more, possibly making some savings around efficiencies so that they can be applied to other projects. But doing things right on the efficiency side. I think the other side of that is the effectiveness side, which is doing the right things in the first place. I can give you highly accurate predictions around the outcomes of projects. And if you know what the most likely outcome of a project is, perhaps even before that project started, as a sponsoring group, are you still going to approve to progress that project in the first place? Perhaps it makes more sense to look at these other alternative projects as well. So I like to think about the application of AI in project management either from an efficiency lens or from an effectiveness lens as well. These days, I'm also starting to talk about not only doing the right things the right way, but I think there's also this angle about for the right reason. And I'll come back to that, I think, in terms of around remarks around for sustainability's sake as well. I have children, you have children. Hopefully, we're going to leave a planet that's well worth them living in the future. Ultimately, this has got to be about improving success. And I don't mean just the execution phase, I mean the outcome phase around project success as well. So if AI can help with all of that, wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? Just in terms of the types of AI, and I know, as I mentioned earlier, AI is almost a ubiquitous term. You can almost drop the word computer or IT now and replace it with AI these days. I think the types of technology that we're focused in on around AI in project management is predictive analytics, and that's some of the case studies I'm going to show you. But I'm also going to allude to natural language and Gen AI as well. But ultimately AI, and again, this is one of the challenges with AI. It knows no geographical boundaries, it knows no sector boundaries. What is the definition of AI? If you put that into an AI, then you'll see hundreds of different definitions, as it were. So I like this one. It's just about improving us in terms of, back to that link with efficiency and effectiveness as well. I think for me, the other point here is that when we think about it in our project world, actually, if AI can be applied to the strategy level, so, I talked about decisions around projects, prioritization of projects, the right balancing of the portfolio in the first place. It's not just about the execution or the design and delivery phase, but also it's about the operate phase as well, and start bringing those silos of data between operations and projects a lot closer as well. So there's a huge opportunity here to drive greater project success, as it were. Let me just dive into the warming up for some of the case studies here a second. And this is the journey that we've been on around predictive analytics. So going from left to right there. Initially, it's about, well, which projects were late, which projects were early. And with those projects, were there a set of features associated with the projects? As you can probably tell by my tone, I'm based in the UK, so maybe the projects out of the UK were the ones that were always the problem children. Obviously, I hear you never hearing that the UK is a problem child. So which projects were late, which projects were early, why were they late? Those features, back to my UK example. If you've got enough data, what you can do is train machine learning models. So we're now talking about machine learning models as a subset of AI to predict the most likely outcome. So look at the patterns in the data. Back to my basic example, projects out of the UK were always overspending, were always late. If I've got a live project out of the UK, you guessed it, a prediction system is also going to suggest that that particular project's at risk. And that's the beginning bit. And that's kind of interesting. You now know that possibly that which projects are going to be late, which ones are going to be early, which ones are going to overspend, etc. But I think where it gets more interesting for me is, well, what can you do if you know that? What actions can you undertake to lower the risk of that delay or that overspend? And that's where prescriptive analytics starts coming in. The prognosis prognostic, easy for me to say, is more about before the project started. Now, those eagle-eyed amongst you can see that actually if you go from left to right, there's sort of simplicity up to complexity there in terms of the technical implementation. In terms of the value you get out of that, isn't that much higher, as it were. Unfortunately, though, it takes you a little bit of time as well to get that intuitive around your project portfolio. And that's not to say the relationship between the human and AI as well. And I think Reinhardt's points at the beginning were very pertinent as to where does that relationship stop and start about AI today, tomorrow, and next week as well. I think is a very interesting debate we're starting to see some on. Let me tell you about what we've been doing. So I said we've been in this space for 7 years. So we've created this tool. It's called IPP, Intelligent Project Prediction. You got it. The clue's in the title. It predicts the most likely outcome. But it's not just the most likely outcome. It also explains why we're having that prediction, why projects out of the UK are always late, as it were. And of course, I'm giving one feature there, one basic example. But more importantly, what actions can you do to bring that project back on track? Now, it's a top-down product, so it's not meant to be another PPM tool. Heaven forbid, there's about 150 of those on the marketplace at this moment in time. So it predicts the big moments. What's the final budget? What's the final go live date? And really, it's aimed at those people that look across a portfolio or maybe run a mega project or a giga project, as it were. And we're predicting extremely accurately, even at the project start, as it were. I can hear you say, well, how does that work, Lloyd? And the way it works is actually when we start with an organization, we create something called an AI and PM adoption strategy. And what that is looking at an organization, balancing off what all of these AI and PM use cases could be and balancing that off to the constraints of the environment so that you end up with a phased roadmap. Let's just assume that that phased roadmap says that you've got sufficient data and you want to go after prediction. So what we then need to do is dive into more detail and do a data maturity assessment. So I'll give you an example there. I have a client at the moment that has fantastic resource data. That's quite a surprise to me, that one. Fantastic schedule data, and it also has fantastic revenue data, but it doesn't have good data around costs. So you've got it, people. Our recommendations to that organization is start predicting around revenue, resource, and schedule, but start preparing around the material cost of that data. And that's what that data maturity assessment does for you. It benchmarks your existing data. It makes recommendations as to how to improve the data. But again, let's just assume that you've got sufficient data to move forward around prediction. And I've alluded to the dimensions there. So schedule, finance, resource, and revenue is a new one that we're now doing as well. But the other type of data we're looking for is features. So just think about that geographical region, think about other features. A feature could be the project manager, it could be the customer sector, the delivery complexity, etc. And we're looking for those consistent areas. We have this concept, we call it the minimum viable governance. So these are the data points that you mandate with your life and you control with your life that are pertinent to all projects, as it were. As we all know, the deeper you get into a project, the more unique it comes. So it comes to where is that line in the sand, if you like. So let's assume we've got that data. We've worked out the other part of the data, which is how to move the data from a host environment into our cloud environment. We're a Microsoft house. So for those that are interested, it means it's an Azure backend and it's played at the front end through Power BI as well. What we do is we're looking for the historical data to train the ML models. We run about half a dozen different ML models, and then the system automatically picks off the ML model, which is proving to be the most accurate for that data set. What do I mean by accuracy? That's the difference between what the prediction system said would happen versus what actually happened in real life, as it were. So, and each time that we take an ingest, so for example, on a monthly basis, we'll then look at whether that model is still remaining to be the most accurate for that data set. We then obviously have to provide those predictions, play those back to people. And this is one thing that I just wanted to stress here, that this is not just a technical journey. This is an adoption journey. This is a change management journey. You can imagine the highly experienced project manager who's reporting X on their project, and suddenly the prediction system is suggesting that actually they should be reporting Y. There's going to be resistance to change. Or similarly, it's about where do you embed these type of systems within the workflows. So, for example, if you're talking about projects that are live, maybe this sits alongside the monthly reporting cycle, or maybe it's a gate review or assurance reviews. If you're talking about projects not yet started, maybe it's at that moment when a business case is being provided. Tell me what the prediction system is saying. Yeah, so it's all about that adoption journey, all about embedding. And, again, just repeat this point that I said earlier. I can give you a highly accurate prediction. You can completely ignore it. Yeah, so again, this is the whole cultural shift, taking a more data first approach to your projects. The other thing about this is I can get to really accurate predictions, but I need to maintain them. And broadly speaking, the only way I can maintain them is either introduce more data, more projects, more data points. So maybe I bring in risk data, maybe I bring in lesson data, or I introduce more algorithms as well, so more accuracy in the ML models as well. Hopefully that's made sense. Obviously get in touch if you want to unpick that a little bit more in detail. Let me just tell you about some of the results we're seeing. So we were kind of lucky that this is a large global logistics company. They work in yellow and red, if you happen to work out who that is. The UK division has 300 projects. They had that typical challenge that I painted earlier, that when you looked at the original plans and budget, they were not necessarily doing as well as they'd like to against those. And of course, what that creates is noise in the system. There's change controls, there's executives not knowing which projects to focus their guns in on. You guessed it, we stood up IPP. The one thing I didn't mention actually is that data maturity assessment that I mentioned earlier is not a one-off exercise. It is actually an automated process. Every time we take the data in, we do a data maturity assessment against six dimensions. We play back to a function like the PMO to say, this particular project is lacking data here, there, or wherever. This is the example where we're achieving that highly accurate predictions, and actually we're embedding it within the management controls of that organization. Just to turn that into a set of statistics for you, we've turned the dial on data maturity. Yeah, so we all have heard of the term garbage in, garbage out, in particular when it comes to AI models. So we've really looked at turning that maturity of the data up. Actually, more importantly than that, we've majorly reduced the amount of projects that are overspending. And there are still some projects overspending, but the amount that they're overspending by is a lot less, as it were. On their particular portfolio, that works out at about a 6.4% saving. We've got other clients which are heading more towards 10%, as it were. The key here is when we onboard with a client, in that first step, that data maturity assessment, we're also benchmarking the current performance of projects within that organization, and we're monitoring those going forward, as it were. So then I can put up these type of statistics, as it were. We were kind of lucky, and this again just starts alluding to what Reinhardt said here, is that this particular organization had a huge push on project lessons learned. They had a product actually called Lesson Flow. I'd never heard of it, but it's a repository of lessons, and they were mandated that the lessons were recorded at the end of every project. Obviously, they were encouraged to record them as they go. And I think the database now is up to about 5,500 lessons over 200 plus projects. So what we realized it was, first of all, the power of lessons is that, we've all been there. They tend to be shelfware at the moment. So the whole point here is to try and unlock the right lessons and match those to the right projects. Well, we can do that through the features that we were matching to as well. Give me all of the lessons for projects out of the UK, match those to live projects out of the UK, or even match those to projects proposed out of the UK. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Actually, this is where Gen AI really comes into its own, because you can start objectifying those lessons, removing duplicates and making very clear statements. And you can see what happens then is that you can start reducing the number of lessons. And again, this whole point of this top-down approach that I mentioned earlier, as it were. And I was certainly taught by a highly experienced, highly successful PM consultancy leader back in my early days that it's the 80-20 rule when it comes to lessons, NAIF, risks. Manage the big ones and the other ones will bounce off, as it were. Sorry, not small off. So you can see we reduced the number of lessons as well. So now you imagine what you're doing here is you're predicting most right at the start of projects, really accurate predictions, but you're also serving them the right lessons, the right risks as well. And actually, one of our clients had a function that appraises business cases, and that's really helped drive the efficiency of that function, because no longer do you have to look down the back of a cupboard to try and work out those lessons from that particular organization. I think one of the things for me here is, which data sources do you hook this into? And we've been lucky with this organization with the appropriate guardrails. They allow us to look into external LLMs, OpenAI in this particular case. But I would love to look into best practice knowledge bases. So for example, if IPMA had a knowledge base, how can we reach into that knowledge and train that within the best practice solutions that we're providing? This is how you best practice, how you mitigate a risk, best practice, how you mitigate a lesson. Wouldn't that be exciting? Watch out, coming soon. What big lessons did we learn? I'm conscious of time. I'll finish in the next couple of minutes. Back to, I'm sure if I'd asked the audience what technical risks they would have said, the vast majority people would have jumped on this point about data. Absolutely. You need to work out how to control and how to govern your data, and take that data first mindset as well. Actually, this is also still, relatively early days about technology. We're still learning. All organizations are still learning as well. And if I only said it once, I'm going to say it twice now. This is a change management journey as well, people. Reinhardt gave his little view of where this is going. This is my little view of where we're going in the next couple of years. First of all, with agenetic AI, it allows us to start linking data from what were disparate silos. So, operational data versus project data. Now you can predict outcomes, not just schedules, for example. That also can be applied at strategy, delivery, and operational level, which means that actually that embedding beyond prediction into prescription is starting to happen. We've got clients starting to do that now. Wouldn't it be great if that meant we were more on the front foot of managing risks rather than issues? rather than change controls. I think this whole point, you can see it already, is getting heavier and heavier about this conversation about where technology stops and the human starts. And I think that will continue. Ultimately, it's about improving project success. Last slide from me, and I'm seeing there's lots of questions going in. Just one of our that in case you didn't realise, the yellow and red I referred to, it was about DHL. This is our longest standing customer. They've been on the journey with us. They've had the scars. I wasn't grey when I started this journey, guys. I am a little bit grey now. So yeah, now is the time, and I would challenge each and every one of you to start working out where to begin on this journey of adoption around AI and project management. Akko, I think in terms of timing, that's about the time. Do you want to work on
Yeah,
Q
I mean,
and
thanks,
A's
Lloyd.
now? Do you want me to stop sharing?
Yeah, first I would like to thank you. It was very interesting, as expected, presentation, and I especially appreciate that your timing is perfect, right? So
Oh, thank
there
you.
was there was definitely you are obviously time aware. So as you can see, in the meantime, we had some discussions in the chat, and you had also a few very interesting questions. Reinhard was kind enough to provide his answer, but you're more than invited also to answer them yourself. While you were preparing for that, I just wanted to comment a few things from my side. First of all, I completely agree, and this is the message in many of my lectures and workshops, that actually implementation of artificial intelligence in many areas, but also in the project management, is a change management journey. I think that this is, I mean, we can't stress this enough, right? Because people usually think that this is technical thing and that you need IT department, but actually very often you would need to have HR department involved. Unfortunately, they're not enough, but I would say then definitely management, the boards and stuff like that. So to create this change. Also, my second comment, and I will not ask all of my questions just to give more time to the others, but this is something that I also think is extremely important, connected what you said with data. So we need to have the good project database. And this is something that we currently are also, if I understood correctly, are building, because I think that this is going to be crucial. And this is maybe translating also maybe to the first question from my side. How do you think it's easier now? How many projects are in the digital format and that could be used to feed all of those machine learning algorithms, right? And how many projects actually do
Yeah,
you need? Because very often for the ML systems, you need like millions of data points and even, I don't know, hundreds of
yeah,
millions. And this, I mean, at
yeah,
least in my very limited experience, proved to be quite a challenge, right? So we
yeah,
will need to collect much more, because I mean, if I would be able to lay my hands on a few hundred projects, this would be great for me. But in theory, I would really like to have, I don't know, 100,000 projects. So what is your
yeah,
take on
yeah,
this?
yeah, yeah. I think just coming back to your first point about change management, just say, wasn't that always the way in projects? You know, any successful
Yeah.
project needs a change management thread. But actually coming back to how much data, and I'll answer that specifically in 1 second. It is clear that different organizations have different levels of data maturity. So the example I gave there with that, there's actually a global telco that I'm talking about there, in terms of, it's not just the number of projects, but it's the types of data associated with those projects. So again, I'm just going to repeat this point about minimum viable governance, which is, which data points are you gathering across your projects? And we as humans have a tendency to try and gather up our shadows, as in micromanage everything. And I think that's one of the challenges that we have here. If, for example, you ask 20 risk managers to tell us what are the important data points around risks, I'll end up with a risk spreadsheet, a risk log that's got 40 or 50 different fields in it. If I ask the program manager what the important data points are around risks, then I think we'll probably end up with 10, 15, maybe 20 or something. So I think there's this lens of pragmatism and control that you need to get right. So, this point about making sure there's consistency, but those people who are at the sharp end, giving them the flexibility to do that as well. Actually, what we found is that you don't need that many projects, certainly not into the numbers that you were referring to. So I'll just remind you of the case study there. We were 300 projects and we trained the models to 90% accuracy on 200 legacy projects. Actually, with some, we're doing a lot less than that. So again, it's a sort of link between the volume of historical data, the number of data features, and the algorithms that you're applying. The takeaway I tend to give to people is think of 50 historical, 50 live, something in that order. Obviously, the more historical you've got, the richer the data, the more quicker you're going to get to accurate predictions as well. But it's not in the realms of millions.
Great, thanks. This is very useful answer. I think that you have 2 or 3 more in the Q&A. I don't know if you can see them, so maybe if you also want to answer some of them, they were quite interesting and relevant, I would say.
Excellent. In the Q&A. Okay. I have questions centered around which was previously mentioned, given that every project is inherently unique, blah, 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 blah. So the short answer is I agree that every project is unique, but it's where that line of uniqueness starts and stops. If I ask, at the individual task level, for me, I absolutely agree. You start comparing apples with oranges, if you know that expression. So things aren't exactly the same. However, if you bring that further up and start thinking about, things like, well, does every project have a business case? Does every project have a start and end date? Does every project have a forecast date? Does every project know which geographical region it's hitting? Does every project know which the project manager is? Before you know it, you can come up with 25 to 30 features where you can compare all projects next to each other. I'll just second guess a follow-on question, which is the agile dimension. We looked into agile and decided that we weren't going to create a bespoke agile solution at this moment in time because we've got higher priorities on our development roadmap. And the reason I say that is we know that agile is often completely adopted differently by different companies. So you're really creating a bespoke solution for that particular company. So our line in the sand is wagile, if that's the right phrase. So has it got a business case? Has it got a go live date? Within that project, there might be lots of sprints, etc. But that's a lower level granularity. So yeah, I think this whole point of where that line in the sand is, where is that minimum viable governance that can allow you to compare projects, including innovation projects, including building projects, including technology projects. Our data, our case studies show that you can compare those different types of projects together as well.
Great. I think that you have definitely time to answer 1 or 2 additional questions. If you can see them there in the answered
I'm going to
part.
the answered ones, because I noticed that there was just that one from projects were delivered late and over budget. Are we repeating past mistakes? I think this is a really interesting point, because you're absolutely right, and this is one of the massive tensions that we have is that you're using historical data to predict the future. That's okay, but then you take an action to alter the future. One of the battles that we've got, and my golly, hats off to those mathematicians and data scientists, is how do you then correct the next prediction, as it were? So I definitely have some sympathy with that particular point, but let's correct where we were going right and where we were going wrong, and then we can attack it further, as it were. So hopefully
And
that
there is
gives.
one connected question with that. So we have companies that have historical data and projects, but there are some new companies, right, who don't have some kind of
Yeah,
old database of
yeah,
projects. What to
yeah.
do in that case?
Yeah,
This is
it's
from
a really
Arthur
good
coming.
question. And it's not just new companies, it's things like giga projects and things like that as well that you haven't been done before. And ultimately, there's this point about where do you get the historical data from, as it were, if the project is a unique undertaking in a unique environment. And there's two ways from my perspective. A is the quicker that you set yourself up for success, the better. So, in other words, you define what that minimum viable governance is. You start recording that data on a regular basis. You start monitoring the accuracy of the prediction. You start monitoring the creation of that database so that data maturity and prediction accuracy comes together. So that's one view of the world. But of course, that may take some time if you're starting from zero position. The only other choice you've got is to look for benchmarking data. Now, in my mind, this is where that brings in some accuracy in the predictions in their own right. I just talked about comparing one organization to another organization is very hard to do. I think you're probably better off if you're going down that route, maybe creating a benchmarking tool that others might be interested in. But if you're starting from the zero position, you need to work out how to do your historical data, work out your plan around historical data. I think the other thing I would focus in on is, we talked about efficiency and effectiveness. Maybe the focus initially for those organizations is around efficiency savings, access to knowledge, for example, streamlining, automating the project delivery process whilst building up the data set, if that makes sense, Aka.
Great. I think that you covered a lot of the ground here. Do you see any other questions or comments that you want to address?
May I ask one question?
Yeah, of course you
Yeah,
can.
sure.
Lloyd, now my critical question to you is what is our role as humans in this world of prediction
Yeah.
machines? Are we the bottleneck or what?
Mhm.
Well, life would be easier without humans, Reinhard, wouldn't it, eh? So,
Not always.
I'm only kidding. I'm a human, by the way. Can I just say? Let me answer that question. I was on a very interesting conversation with academic researchers who had been commissioned by one of the world's largest IT companies. We will all know which company that is. And they looked at the data around projects from a perspective of how much human intervention could be in that data. And the conclusion they came to was that the majority of project control processes could be completely automated via AI. So I mean scheduling, forecasting, procurement, contract management, all of those very quantitative data points. The bit that they said it will be the ultimate piece, and I think we've probably heard this from a few people now, is much more on the softer side. So the decision making, the unwritten rules of us around humans. For some reason, they had risks on that side as well. Whereas, for me, it's like you could put all of the processes, but keep the thin layer on top. So their conclusion was that technology will increasingly enable us to be left with this softer side of projects, and those people that have been around projects a longer time know that as a project director, that's where you earn your trust, influencing, decision making, stakeholder management. So I think it's going to allow us to do that. Now, sorry, I know this is a long answer. I often ask people what their view is of when we would get an autonomous project. In other words, no human intervention in the project. And if in an audience of 100 people, I can tell you, interestingly enough, it's the data scientists who say, yeah, no, that's going to happen, and you're talking about less than 5% in a room. I've been asking that question for probably 3 years, by the way. If I then ask the same question and say, well, hold on, in 100 years, do we think we'll get an autonomous project manager? The answer is a lot higher than the
Mm.
5%. And again, maybe depending on your view,
Yeah.
maybe you're in the yes or the no camp, even in
Mm.
100 years. I think it's clear that when you look at time, there is going to be vast steps towards autonomy. I think the other
Yeah.
dimension is how complex the project is. Is it a repeatable project? Is it just a decision tree of a project?
Yeah, I mean,
Again,
for me, it
that's
would
where
be interesting
autonomous will
also to see how
come
the
in. Yeah.
complexity of the projects will change because of the tools that are going to be available for us. But I mean, just to be mindful of time and to mention, we had some answers that are really interesting also in the Q&A from other participants. Valentina wrote hers, so I think this is also something interesting to read. And we have some other questions. So I think that we succeeded in starting this fire of discussing AI and project management. Unfortunately, we have time that is planned, but I can promise only that we are going to have more webinars this year on the topic, and I'm going to be happy to discuss more of the things with our members. I can see that some of them already added me during the webinar on LinkedIn, which is always a good thing, so we stay connected. So just a few more information from my side. So what we did, if you don't know, we created inside of the AI special interest group the calendar for this year, so we can also kind of share it, but also show on our side how we are in some segments using artificial intelligence kind of to do the marketing for the organization, but also to enjoy this newly discovered, I would say, creativity and possibilities that artificial intelligence is giving us, right? So you can also probably find it on our web pages and download it if this is something interesting for you. Regarding the questions that you mentioned and answers that you provided, there is a little bit longer answer from my side that was published just recently in the Institute for Project Management, the inevitable role of AI. So there are some of my predictions what might happen in the not maybe next 1 or 2 years, but I would say maybe 5 to 10 years, which is considered like midterm, even maybe a longer period of time since the pace of the change. And basically the most important information from my side, which is also going to be interesting not only for members but also for Reinhard and Lloyd to share this information and to participate. We wanted to publish the call for AI projects, right? So we want to connect use cases, what you're doing with artificial intelligence. Now, I mean, if since the last year in 2024 we had the research that was done asking our members many questions about it. What do they think? What are their predictions? What that they're using and stuff like that. In 2020 we had the first IPMA research on the topic of artificial intelligence. So now probably it's a good time to see what actually is happening, what people are using, what people are doing, what are their ideas. And I think it's a process of discovery. If we would be able to collect all of those ideas, all of those experiences and data from all around the world, and from what I could see, we really have very diverse membership here. It would be great to kind of to get and to share with all of the others nice examples that they're working on this year. So basically what we're looking for, something very simple, 3 to 8 pages on PowerPoint or PDF. Describe your AI-driven project success story. And of course, if you can map it with the relevant competences, it would be even better, right? This is always a good choice. So the timeline, we are going to have this call open for the next 2 months approximately. I think it's enough time for everybody to structure something with what they're doing, and then we are going to process them probably until the September. And then if we find something that is really interesting, I would be happy to invite our members to share it on the webinar that we are going to have in the second part of the year. So how can you submit? You can contact me directly. I have social media. Here is my mail. And of course, all of this is going to be available and shared on IPMA LinkedIn and in the newsletter. So send your use cases directly on my mail, and then we are going to process it. So this is it from my side. I think that we had very interesting discussion and Q&A session, very interesting lecture. Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you, Wagner, for your always great participation and contribution. And I think that this is perfect time to close the webinar with big thanks to our members who obviously have a lot of interest for this topic. So this is it for today. Thanks, guys, and thank everybody.
Thank
Thanks to
you,
you,
everybody. It's a pleasure.